Umezawa, beautiful. Wow, certainly what we would love to hear and what we should be hearing during this time now, a beautiful prayer, music of healing, music of hope. So fantastic. So thank you so much, Professor Labelle, for the splendid introduction, and certainly we're making much ado about you, and it's well deserved. So we won't say after much ado.
Thank you.
Welcome. How are you doing today?
Good. I think, the world is in such a crisis right now with the COVID situation, but, the vaccines are coming out, and I'm really starting to see somewhat of some positive things going on in the air within our country. But yeah, I am pushing along just as many folks during this pandemic. But I am grateful to be alive.
I'm sure, absolutely. And I just wanted to, someone said, do you still hear the echo, or is that just in the video?
Oh, yes. I think there was a lot of echo in the video. I should have
Oh,
given
I'm so
you a
sorry.
different video, but yeah, there was a lot of echo in there.
Oh,
But
well, I was
it's
it's
okay.
no echo for me, so I enjoyed it. But it's okay now in terms of the.
Yeah.
Okay, thank goodness, excellent.
Yeah, I was at the historic Grace
Yeah,
Cathedral. So
beautiful, incredible. And I put the link to the video in the chat as well. The World Tree of Hope lighting ceremony, incredible. And I just wanted to introduce everyone who may not know me, although many of you do. My name is Mike Fan, and I'm a master's student in Opera and Voice faculty at the Schulich School of Music. And I also have the honor and the responsibility of being the Equity and Diversity Commissioner from McGill, representing the graduate student voice in particular. And so I'm really happy and thrilled that the voice areas was open to our suggestions to look for guests that represent more of the diversity of the world and of what we want to see in the classical music industry as well. And I'm thrilled to see so many familiar faces, of course, from our faculty, as well as some other faces that I've recognized from other places and names. So this is very, very exciting. And we're thrilled you could all take some time today to be with us in this space. And I also wanted to say that if you feel comfortable, you can use an alias, you can put your pronouns in your name, you can hide your video if you like, if you're zoomed out, I'm sure many are. And of course, we want to talk about wonderful things, but we also want to talk about possibly some deeper issues also. So if you need some space for yourself, feel free, turn off your video and take the space and the time you need. It's difficult times, so we want to be especially mindful of everybody's needs during the time now. And so, as I mentioned, I put the link in the chat, and highly recommend subscribing to Breanna Sinclairé's channel. There was some really beautiful performances. And so, Breanna, I would love to know more about this performance and why you chose it, because we'd asked you to select something we could play for everyone today. And was there something in particular that was special about this performance, or something that was really that you wanted to share, I guess, through it?
yeah, so the performance was at the historic Grace Cathedral Church in San Francisco. And it was for the World Tree of Hope ceremony. And it was for folks who were in the AIDS pandemic and folks who were dealing with HIV. And so we were just celebrating their lives and celebrating who they are and how they contribute to the community and the LGBTQI community. So it was a very special day, and also it happens during Christmas week, and so that's why we have the tree, and then we have all the names of folks who have passed away due to the AIDS pandemic, but just honoring their lives and honoring their contribution to the LGBTQI community. And so I really wanted to share that, and also just uplift those folks in our world. So yeah.
Absolutely. How fantastic. And I wanted to mention as well, so we'll be having an interview until around 5:30, and then we'll be taking some questions from you all. So either at that time or throughout, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box, or you can ask it live to Ms. Breanna herself later on. But that's what I find really, speaking of which, the performance you mentioned, what's so beautiful about your work is that it's not just limited to classical music and singing well, looking good on stage, which is of course what we all want, but you really are reaching beyond the limits of classical music and reaching communities such as the queer community, which is so important. And I've seen an interview as well with Screaming Divas, one of which
Yes.
Sandra Radovanovsky is
With Sandra
living in Canada,
Radovanovsky, yes.
yes, and Carrie Alcama, yes, and that you were also protesting last year, of course, in June when things happened around George Floyd's murder, and you were also singing for the protests. So you've been very active also beyond simply the classical music world and singing opera, singing art song, but really engaging communities and being involved and making positive change in your country, in the world. And so could you just speak also to maybe some highlights of other performances you've done for these communities and why it's so important and it's so meaningful for you?
Yeah, there's this common saying that music is universal, and it's designed to reach people of all genders, ethnicities, and it's something that as an artist and as a musician, I had to learn that yes, I am trans, but also it's about the music and how do I interpret the music and how do I interpret the text and how do I interpret what the composer wants for us artists and singers to portray on the stage or on a platform. And I performed at the San Francisco Symphony and I sung the Montreux s'ouvre à ta voix from Samson and Delilah. And that was such a monumental moment because I've never sang alone on a stage with an orchestra. And I was really nervous because, being a trans woman, I really had to work hard to get to that level. And, there were a lot of folks who didn't believe in my work. And so I really had to ignore the negativity and continually work hard on my craft and work hard on my musicianship. And I sang at the San Francisco Symphony. It was for their New Year's Eve celebration in 2018. And it was such just a monumental moment, to see a trans woman of color singing a piece of work from Samson et Delilah. And it was really monumental for me because, I've worked so hard to get to where I am. And it was just an experience that I will not forget. And people were touched by their experience. And also it's just the beginning of hiring more trans and LGBTQ artists in this work and in this art form. So it's really, I'm very grateful and honored to even be a part of this, phenomenon in regards to the LGBTQI community.
Yes, absolutely. And what you talk about in terms of representation and diversity on the stages and in this industry, it's so important. Something I feel as well too, coming from Chinese Canadian immigrant background, being queer, genderqueer myself as well. It's inspiring to me, even though I'm not Black, I'm not trans, but it still makes it feel that people that are marginalized can succeed in this industry and have their voices heard. And you wrote this beautiful piece for the Canadian Opera Company. Sadly, of course, like many things in the pandemic, there were performances canceled. You were set to do a solo recital in the gorgeous Canadian Opera Company.
Yes,
and I've been in Toronto quite a number of years. Before moving to Montreal, and I was looking eagerly forward to that. I've been on those wooden steps many times, and we're putting it to the university. It will happen someday, and you will be there, and it's gorgeous because you can see the cars outside the glass windows.
Yes, it's gorgeous. Yes.
It's gorgeous. I'm sure you've seen photos. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, many artists, we all have experienced, especially during this pandemic, of performances being canceled and rescheduled. And so, you know, it was an opportunity for all of us as artists to really be creative and figuring out ways of really sharing the music to the world. And unfortunately, it's virtually. You know, I'm not a fan of virtual performances. You know, as artists, we're trained to connect with audiences live on a stage. And so it was very hard for me to really adjust my mind and adjust everything and really figure out how am I able to deliver virtually like I deliver on a platform or on a stage. So, you know, all of us artists, we all have been affected by it, but you know, the music never stops. Like I always say that we are continually making music. The music never stops. And you know, I was getting prepared for this big recital and I was really bummed that it was canceled, but I continually worked on my music. I continually worked on my technique. I continually worked on my craft and figure out, and it was a nice period because I'm like, okay, so this period of time in my life, you know, I was able to pick repertoire and figure out things that were good for my voice and really develop a package for myself, which I think is so important. And also picking music that I'm able to sing healthily and sing well. And so, and also music that also challenges me, but also that I'm able to sing that with comfortability. So yeah, this whole year has really have been such a dramatic change for all of us. And I really hope that the recital will come forth. And I was supposed to be with the Against the Grain company. We were working on the opera Bound by Kevin Lau and Joel Ivany, and that was postponed as well. So, but they also have been discussing about some developing works with it and what we should do with it next. And it could be possibly a film, but we're just waiting on just the next steps in the process. So.
Yes, absolutely. And that was a very exciting project and new work. And MGSS Grain Theater has been so supportive. Before we had even actually formally announced this masterclass, they reached out to me and asked if they could help spread the word. And they're so lovely. So
Yes.
excited to hear that it's still in the works and grateful for them. They're one of the huge innovative indie opera companies that Canada's famous for. We have so many, especially in Toronto, but even in Montreal as well too. Some of our McGill alum, for example, have been involved with indie opera companies. So that's very exciting. And speaking of the COC and connecting with audiences online, so you had also written this beautiful piece, which I got in my email inbox one day. I just wanted to read a little bit and connecting to what you said earlier about representation.
Mm-hmm.
If I can quote this, I've had to fight against transphobia and racism my whole life, even in the classical music and academic worlds. Many opera roles have been traditionally performed by white women, leaving few choices for women of color, let alone trans women. But overall, I found the support I've received over the years far outweighs the difficulties. Ultimately, I hope audiences will see past my transness and see me as a human, singing from the depths of my being. Growing up, I never saw a role model on stage or screen. For that reason, I hid myself the longest time. Visibility is something that must never wane. There are so many great translators, activists, and musicians that we must celebrate. I would not be here today if it were not for trans activist and community leader Miss Major and other translators that paved the way for me and the trans community. Our lives do matter and we are capable of doing great things. If I can help a young girl, especially trans girls of color, to dream big, I've done my job. And I would say you certainly have and continue to do. But yeah, I was wondering if you could just talk about this opportunity you had with the COC, kind of use their platform and yes, unpack this a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to rewind, you know, I've experienced homelessness. Like I was homeless in New York City for a couple of months or a couple of years ago. And really just, you know, I think in regards to the LGBT community and being trans, you know, there's a lot of disparities that we have to go through in order to become successful. And those disparities that I've experienced, such as financial disparities and housing and all of that, it takes a lot, it takes an emotional and mental strain. And when I got my master's, when I was studying at the San Francisco Conservatory, I studied under Ruby Pleasure. And she said to me, she said, Breanna, you know, you must not focus on your transness and focus on the work and focus on the music. And that was something that was um, continually pressed in my mind during the course of my schooling, because I had to learn that, you know, it's not about my transness, it's about doing the work and how well you do that work. And but yeah, it's been such a path, and just a path of resilience, and that I really had to really focus on the craft and focus on the music. And you know, I always talk about trans leaders like Miss Major and all these folks. These folks have really paved the ways for us, that we're able to go to school and apply for jobs and to walk on the street. And you know, and enjoying the basic fundamentals of life. And you know, as an artist, it's continually been, you know, I'm not saying that my path is easy, because it's not. I've experienced a lot of challenges, but it's also how do you handle and tackle those challenges. And also being a musician, especially as a vocalist, you know, us students, you know, students and myself, you know, we all have a lot of work, you know, a lot of work on technique, a lot of work on languages and et cetera. And I was dealing with, you know, the stress of getting my master's program and also the stress of transitioning. And so I had to really balance those things in my life. And I was kind of like forced to really examine myself whole and why I am doing this type of music. But I grew up learning great opera singers. My grandmother, she was the one who introduced me to classical music as a child. And she took me to see Madame Puccini's Madame Butterfly in the Lyric Opera House in Baltimore, Maryland at 5. And I told my grandmother, I said, this is what I want to do with my life. I'm like young, I'm like, this is what I want to do. And my grandmother kind of, you know, instilled in me that passion, and she saw that gift, and she put me in voice lessons at Morgan State University with Harold Carter. And at the age of 12, and then I went to Baltimore School for the Arts, and I went to Tanglewood for 2 summers. So I experienced all of, you know, just great music and great teachers in my path. So yeah.
Absolutely. What a fantastic lineage that you are now part of as well, and now passing the torch. And it's so inspiring, so incredible. And because as we know, I'm sure all of us voice students and also the faculty know, it's quite a challenging road. Often, as you mentioned, it takes a lot to be a musician, a classical musician, and a classical vocalist, when there's so much that can change in a day or in an hour sometimes with a voice, especially as a young singer. And dealing with so many of those challenges as well, it adds so much, so many layers on that. And it's so inspiring, that resilience and that drive and that perseverance that, that led you through all of that. And I'm wondering if you can share this incredible story that you talk about, the period when you were getting out of homelessness, and this man, this stranger, you know what I'm talking about, with I believe is to finish your degree at Cal Arts. Do you mind sharing that?
Yes, yes.
I think it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so I was homeless like 3 months in New York City. I was planning on studying with a coach in New York City because I wanted to audition for Manhattan School of Music and the Juilliard School. And so during the course of my homelessness, you know, everything didn't work out or plan the way I wanted it to be. And I was staying with a friend in Harlem. And so while I was looking for a job and I come back home, I see all of my stuff in the trash can and in the garbage. And her roommate, who was a heterosexual male, said that they felt uncomfortable with me living there. And so they threw all my belongings in the trash. I rummaged through the trash can and grabbed my purse and 2 outfits. And so I was homeless during those course of 3 months. And it was the most difficult thing to deal with, because it really shows you the realities of what trans folks go through in regards to employment finding housing, finding financial security. And it shocked me because I really had to navigate this world that did not want me nor accepted me. And so there was this guy, his name was Chris, and he heard me just humming. And he came up to me and he said, "Are you a singer or something, or an artist?" And I said, "I am, but I'm trying to go back to California to finish my senior year at Cal Arts. But right now things have been a little rough." And so what he did was he wrote me a check um, to take a plane back to California to finish my degree. And I was just like, "Why is this like an angel watching over me or whatever?" But
Yeah.
he wrote it with no exchange, nothing. He wrote this check and he said, "My goal for you is that you go back to school and get your degree, and you'll text me your bachelor's degree once you finish." And so that was my gift to him. And so I did. And yeah, I don't think I would be here if it wasn't literally for him. For, he really took me out of, this really dark place in my life so that I'm able to finish my schooling and pursue my classical training. So I'm thankful for him.
Absolutely. And I remember reading as well, you had also sent him your master's
I
uh,
did.
diploma from San Francisco Conservatory of Music after. So then you also went that further step as well too, which is incredible. And what a gift,
Yes.
what a story, what an incredible moment of grace and serendipity. And one of my mentors, Anne Van Zandt, she always loves to say, "Don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle." So
Yes.
sometimes it's literally that turn of the corner away. And I think or a lot of us are feeling that now, where it feels like, especially for young singers, maybe it's easy to give up, or why bother, or it seems impossible.
Yeah.
And that's been only one of many challenges that you've had to overcome.
Yeah.
Side by side, many glorious experiences also. But what was it that kept you going through those really difficult moments? Did you have a moment where you felt like you wanted to throw in the towel, and what kept you going? I know there were, as you mentioned, mentors along the way. I believe Jessie Norman at Tanglewood had said that she
Yes.
saw something special in you, and there were many others
Yes.
as well. So I wonder if that was part of it, but I wonder if you can share as well, what was that guiding you along? What was pulling you forward through those moments?
To be honest, I really don't know. To be honest, like it was literally, honestly,
Sink or swim.
I know this sounds cliche, but it's the music. It was the music that drove me. It gave me hope because I did had this voice. And when I was a child, I grew up in the Baptist church, Southern Baptist church, and I would sing solos and I remember the pastor of the church went up to my mother and said, "You need to do something with this child's voice because his voice is quite powerful and
Wow.
strong and can really sing." And so that was always something that just kept me going. And also, when I was in school, I really looked up to African American opera singers like Jessie Norman
Yes.
and Leontine Price and Grace Bumbry and Shirley Barrett and all these people. They gave me hope because I'm like, I cannot imagine what they had to deal with during that time period of racism and inequality, and how they were able to, withstand all of that and sing the repertoire with brilliance. And so seeing that, especially during, the rougher parts of my schooling, it really gave me hope and aspiration to keep moving forward.
Incredible. It's amazing to hear. And we're so grateful you persevered, because the world gets to witness this talent and this incredible voice. And
Thank
speaking
you.
of this incredible voice, you're welcome. And you have been written saying, or have talked about having naturally, I wonder if it was all like even before puberty, but 4.5 octave range that you've been
Yes.
blessed with. So as you said, you could sing bass, baritone, tenor, contralto,
Yes.
mezzo, soprano, all, maybe not Queen of the Night, but you never
Well,
know.
well, no, well, not Queen of the Night.
Maybe, that's a special cup of tea. But the phenomenal instrument and and unique as well too, but it's enabled you to sing so much repertoire, but at the same time, you really had to choose, okay, where do I feel comfortable? What kind of repertoire, what kind of fach feels kind of comfortable? And as we sort of alluded to, you'd sung a lot of mezzo repertoire, you'd sung as a mezzo for a while. There was even, I believe, a documentary called Mezzo, which was about you,
Yes.
focused on you.
Yes.
And now you're
You have done your research, Mike.
I told you I was a fangirl. Yes, but I'm a master's student, so I have this thorough academic training. Yes, but now you're really making your way in as a soprano. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about fach and the categorization of voice and find your way between that. For example, for myself, I started my master's as a baritone and transitioned to singing tenor this year. And a friend of mine who studied in this program a year ahead of me started as a baritone and switched to being countertenor. But I feel for you, all the thoughts and the journey in your voice has been quite astounding. So I'm wondering if you talk about your voice and your journey in terms of fach and singing and the technique and working on that.
But as a vocalist, our voices are continually evolving and they're continually changing. Yes, you're a tenor now, Mike, but you never know. You could be a dramatic tenor later, or a Helden tenor, or maybe a countertenor. Your voice is continually changing, and that was something that I had to learn during my schooling. And when I sing at the Baptist church, I could sing all of the voice types in the church. And so when we would have rehearsals, they would move me around around the choir to assist, the baritones and the tenors and the sopranos and altos. But when I was getting my training at the Baltimore School for the Arts, I was forced to be a tenor, because I was a 6'2" male at the time. And so my teachers were really pushing me to be this heroic tenor and this strong, lyric tenor. And it was just something that I was not comfortable with. And I would get jokes from my peers at Baltimore School for the Arts, and they would say to me like, you're going to be a countertenor one day, or you're going to do this. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be a countertenor. And I always thought that countertenors' voices were quite strange and eerie in a way for me.
No offense if there are any on the call.
And so I was going through that period in my life. And even when I went to the Tanglewood Institute, teachers kept coming up to me saying, there's something interesting with your sound. But we're still going to continue singing tenor rap. And so when I got my bachelor's degree at California Institute of the Arts, those first 3 years, I was a tenor. And then the spring of my third year at Cal Arts, I decided that I wanted to transition and become a mezzo, because my gender has always been an issue since I was a child. I never felt comfortable being the other gender. And that was something that I was struggling with. It wasn't dealing with my sexuality. It was mostly dealing with me not connecting with the male body, and that my mind was not connecting with my male body. And so that was a struggle that I continually dealt with, especially dealing with a very strict religious family, and how I was really pushed into the corner to be this man. And also, when I was singing tenor, the girls in the program like, oh my God, yes, we get to sing with, a tall tenor and this and this. And I'm like, I'm sorry, y'all, but it's not going to happen. And so when my final year at Cal Arts, I told the teacher, I said, look, I don't feel comfortable singing tenor. And I said this during my jury, and it was very intimidating and very scary, because I'm like, this is the moment where I'm going to tell them that I want to transition and that I need to change my entire repertoire, which I did. And so they put me with Kate Conklin. She is an Alexander technique specialist, and she really worked on finding my voice and finding how to sing well and comfortably. And I think in regards to when you're training trans students or gender nonconforming students, you have to really understand the fundamentals of singing, because those fundamentals of singing is universal. It doesn't matter if you're transitioning or not. You have to find that place in your voice. Where is that comfortable place in your voice, and how we're able to develop that and take the voice, learning its voice in its extremities, and how do we work through that sound, and how do we connect the head voice and the chest voice. And so those were certain things that Kate Conklin taught me as a young musician, to really experiment with my sound. And there were moments where, we would just play with my voice and sing really, really low notes, even though I thought it was uncomfortable. I'm like, why is she making me sing baritone notes when I want to be a singer? But she said, no, I want you to explore the different parts of your voice and explore the extremities and figure out where does your voice lie and where it lies comfortably. And so I was going through this really strange period of figuring out my voice. And so she was really impressed at how strong my soprano sound was, because she was like, it's not a countertenor's voice. And she said it has more of a warmer timbre to it, a bit more of this head resonance that was developing within me. And she was shocked. And she said, this is not a countertenor sound. And so when I started my master's program at the conservatory under Ruby Pleasure, singing mezzo rep, I really had to, just learn the basic parts of my voice. So she was very basic with my sound, because the other students in the master's program were so far ahead. I was literally starting all over again and starting with a new voice. And it really took a huge toll of just emotionally and mentally, because I felt like I was so behind from all of the other master's students who were just ready to go out, perform, at the New York City Opera, ready to perform, at the San Francisco Symphony Opera. They were ready, getting auditioned for the Marilla program. And I'm here learning the basic parts of my voice all over again. And, but I was so grateful for Ruby, because she really helped me understand my voice in its entirety, and how am I able to interpret my sound to audiences. And, I've had teachers who were very uncomfortable in the fact that I was transitioning during school. And we had opera workshop, our director, he felt very uncomfortable with it. And so I really had to ignore all of the negativity and just keep working and working and working on my voice. But I am so grateful for these teachers, because, and even Sherry Greenawalt from the San Francisco Opera, she really put that emphasis on vowels and how to connect those vowels, and ooh and oh vowels. And ooh is still, I'm American, so, the ooh, and I have a little bit of Southern roots in me. So certain vowels are very difficult, but, Sherry has been really putting emphasis on the English diction and French diction and German diction, and how do I, create consistency with those vowels. But I am grateful for these teachers who really believed in me and pushed me to the limits in a good way.
Yes.
So, it's interesting. I do have all this range, and maybe in the future I might experience singing other Fox or registers, but I'm comfortable with being a lyric soprano as of now.
Beautiful. I mean, they talk about one-woman shows, but you literally could sing every role, But yeah,
not for a while.
if you wanted to, But as you say, it's not just about the voice; it's also your identity, your personal identity, who you feel comfortable portraying. Because often there's many centuries of opera roles that have been written with certain tropes, and I know for me, repertoire-wise, I think I feel more comfortable as a tenor, as a lover or as a poet, rather than like a buffoon or a villain, as often baritones are. But I always say my dream role is Tatiana in Evgeny Onegin by Tchaikovsky,
Yes.
and I'm coming for those soprano roles. I love performing drag. I wouldn't say I'm trans, but very recently, I kind of realized, I'm genderqueer. I like to inhabit both spaces. The feminine part of my identity is very important and strong as well, but as well, I experience a lot of what you had mentioned of not fitting the box or being discouraged from that. So it's beautiful to hear that, and that you are in your authenticity, where your voice and your body and your emotions and your personality feel comfortable, because it's such a gift to finally inhabit that, and to then to empower others to do the same.
Yeah, the thing with authenticity is so important, because whether you're trans or not, it's really about singing with your authentic sound and growing from that sound and evolving from that sound. And that was something that my teachers, especially Sherry, really put emphasis on authenticity. She said, stop trying to sound like everybody else and sound like Breanna Sinclairé. And that was something that Sherry Grunewald said to me every lesson. She goes, no, that's not your voice. This is your voice. And how are we going to, develop that sound and work with the technical aspect of it? And so now I'm singing with my voice, and I'm not trying to sound like this person or sound like this soprano or this mezzo or whatever. Just really being authentic. And that has really given me so much freedom in my music, and I'm able to enjoy my music because I am being authentic, not just physically and as a soprano, but also mentally and emotionally, really becoming authentic within our true selves, which is so important because it actually shows through your music. And when you're authentic, it actually it makes you stand out above the rest. I mean, we have Sandra Radovanowski, which I'm really good friends with. And I met her in San Francisco when she played Norma, and I met her husband, and we all ate dinner. It was so amazing. And she's really just kind of been like a mentor to me for a bit. And I remember when she asked me to be interviewed for her podcast. It was so awesome. Divas, yes, Screaming Divas. I'm like, I'm not a diva yet, but y'all are the queens.
Oh, you in the best way, yes.
Yes, and so, but yeah, and just, that is so important, the importance of authenticity, because that it really will reflect on your sound. And so that was something that I really had to deal with on a personal level. So.
Yes, absolutely. And we're very excited to claim Sandra as one of our own. And I've had the pleasure of seeing her perform many times at the COC. Iconic roles. I was there at a masterclass she did in Toronto at the Alliance Française. And she also gave some talks at the Toronto Public Library. So, and incredibly so humble and down to earth. And as you know, from Screaming Divas, a lot of fun also.
Yes, we had a couple of drinks in the Screaming Divas. But we had such a great time in just really discussing about, equality within this business, in this industry. I mean, equality is still an issue, and I think right now audiences, to me, this is what I perceive, is that audiences are yearning for change. They're yearning for something different, because we can't just stay in that same, in this same level. We have to really, explore and really open the minds of audiences, which I believe is so important. And I think the audiences are yearning for that unique experience. And it's time for a change, a good change, a change that is good and for the good, and for the advancement of the opera field.
Absolutely, very well said. And speaking of which, one of your projects, as you previously mentioned, was Bound, which is still upcoming, and it's a new work, and we're very proud that it's happening in Canada as well too. So could you talk about this piece and also the importance of creating new works, because the character is very interesting and innovative, and something we don't see in the traditional canon. And so talking about, opening up and the canon and creating a positive change, I think this piece is going to be really quite something. But I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about this very interesting role in music and new works.
Yeah, so Bound is really about, the inequalities that we are experiencing today. It took some teachings, well, not teaching, but like just news sources such as like the Trump era and just what's happening within our government, and I play the trans role, Kelly Davidson, and the government is trying to force me to detransition. And and then we have a Muslim character, an African American male character. So it's really these four characters trying to just maneuver in the age of, let's say, quote unquote, Trump or the corrupt government. And so we were so excited to do this piece, this contemporary piece, because number one, it was going to come out during this, strange period within the presidency and with the Trump era. Oh, I think I heard something.
Sorry, it's just someone.
Yeah,
the voices.
Yeah, and so it was composed by Kevin Lau, and Joel Ivany worked on the libretto for this piece of work. And as a trans artist, I am thankful that they've given me this role to play.
Yes.
But also, I just want to get to a place where, as trans artists, that we're not pigeonholed or put in a box to only sing trans roles. Like, I want to sing Pamina. I want to sing, like in larger opera houses. I want to sing Tosco. I want to be a Carmen, if I want to. These type of things is like, I love the role of Kelly Davidson, but I just also want folks to understand that we're not, just because we're trans, we don't always have to play trans roles. But I love the cast. I love Bessie Callender. She was going to play the Muslim character. And, we created this camaraderie, this friendship, and we were just saddened that it was postponed because the pandemic was such in a dramatic high at that moment. And, so Bound really was just a place of, acknowledging these stories and how important these stories are, and how we are able to, sing and bring forth and make these stories come to life. And I am so grateful that just to be in the midst of this opera that was composed by Kevin Lau. The music, we had to structure the music. When I sent it to Sherry, my piece, Kelly Davidson, was supposed to be for a countertenor, and I was like, this is too low for me, like, because there were some really parts where I had to sing in my chest voice, which I'm okay, but I sent it to Sherry, and we rehearsed it and worked on the music. And so we kind of fixed the notes, put it in more of a higher timbre, certain parts, especially, making them an octave higher than it was. And so we really had to restructure it. And I had a meeting with Joel and Kevin. I'm like, is this okay that we're doing this? Because Sherry is really, reconstructing my pieces and my arias. So that I can sing it well. And so it was approved. And, there has been talks that, I know they did the Messiah Complex. And so they have been discussing about doing a similar thing with the Bound, making it into a film. So we'll see how that goes, but it's still in the works. And they're just figuring out logistical things with it. So hopefully, we'll see what happens. But yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, if it's innovation, they're the right ones to do it, because they're so innovative in what they do and how they works. Ooh. Yes. Absolutely.
Sorry, my lipstick is like running.
Oh, no worries. Being there, done that. And especially those of us in opera, most of us have lots of makeup and wardrobe to contend with sometimes. Oh, amazing. Yes. Well, that's incredible. And you mentioned your current coach, I believe it's Sherry Grunewald from the San Francisco Opera. And And I love that you're so open that you're continuing to coach, because there are many singers, even as you were mentioning, Ms. Redfinovsky, she still is working on things, coaching, and many singers singing at the various highest levels are still learning and coaching. And it's a career where that's something that we'll always be doing. There are some singers that they don't have coaches for a certain period or after their training. Others have like a team of coaches, and some are kind of going intermittently between things from what we hear. So for you, I'm wondering if you can talk about, after your, I guess, formal schooling was done, how you ended up sort of choosing your coach or finding that match, and the importance of continuing to train beyond the confines of academia, let's say.
Yeah, I think it's every vocalist challenge, especially when school is over, when you're graduating, you're like, what do I do next? We do have summer programs that are open for us. We have auditions for specific, programs. And so, I was at a place and I was just like, what am, I mean, to be, I mean, my life kind of did this weird change because they asked me to sing the national anthem for the Oakland A's and then for the Giants. And so my whole life just kind of exploded. And I never thought like that would happen. And so my good friend Christian Purcell, he's a baritone. He sang with the he's an ATLA fellow at the San Francisco Opera. And a couple of other folks were telling me that I should study with Sherry. And even my vocal coach in the master's program, Ruby, said to me that, why don't you study with a coach who is a soprano and move forward with that. And so I emailed Sherry and I'm like, she's probably not going to get this email and she probably doesn't want me to be her student. But I took a leap of faith and wrote her an email and I said, I just graduated my master's and, I really want to keep moving in my singing and keep developing my technique. And surprisingly, she emailed me back. And then it, I started taking lessons with her for about 2 years. And it's been such a magical experience working with her. I'm saddened that she moved to Ohio, but we still keep in touch. Yeah. And we still do our lessons. Wow, I have my first lesson virtually starting next week. But yeah, it's always the question of the unknown, especially when you graduate from schooling, because you've been so immersed into that and trained so hard and you learn so much, and you leave school and you're like, what, it's quiet. And so, but I didn't expect my life to do such big turns like that in regards to me singing, the national anthem. And then I ended up in the New York Times with these other two trans artists, Lucia Lucas, and all these folks. I'm like, what is going on with my life? And I just was not expecting any of this to happen. But, Sherry said, never let those things become a distraction of your work and how well you work. And so I had to make sure that, yes, these distractions that were happening, I had to literally not focus my mind on that, but also focus on working on my voice, learning new rep, getting ready for the recital that it was planned for, getting ready for Bound. So Sherry was like, these are the important things that you need to focus on. So.
Absolutely. Great advice. Long-term thinking rather than the exciting, but the things that are not necessarily going to be part of your longer legacy as an artist, as a performer, as a singer. Although, speaking of which, you have had so many incredible firsts, as you mentioned, singing the anthem for the Oakland A's, I believe also San Francisco Giants and Deltas, the San Francisco Symphony as well too, which I don't know if I may share, I did hear that you had said you were quite ill for that performance. And at the same time, you were able to pull it off. But that, especially, having a first attached of some kind has got to put even more pressure, stress on top of what is already sometimes a nerve-wracking and although exciting experience to perform. So how did you deal with those moments that were very exciting, but also kind of terrifying and
they were,
had a lot of passion?
Yeah, they were really terrifying. I think in regards to being a trans woman, I've had people question my abilities or question my voice or question, and I'm like, look, I have an education, I have a master's degree, I
From
was
an
really being
excellent
questioned
conservatory.
as, yeah.
Yes.
So I was being really questioned as an artist. And so that pressure on top of the pressure of being a first, it was a lot. And that was something, Sherry continually reminded me, like she said, you have to ignore the talk, ignore the jamber or whatever. And yeah, when I sing for the San Francisco Symphony, I sing the Delilah aria, and Sherry was so adamant that I would sing the B flat at the end of the optional B flat.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
which
Of
I
course.
did. And I was really
Mhm.
sick. I had the flu that evening. And I remember walking across the stage and seeing the packed audience because it was sold out. And I see them clapping in the back of my mind. I kept saying, oh, shoot. Well, I said another word in my mind, but I was just like,
Yes.
and I kept saying it over and over and over. And I'm like, okay, take a deep breath, put all of your skills that you've learned in schooling, Alexander technique, and put it in training. This is it. This is what you have been trained to do. And I tore that song to shreds. People were just impressed. I got a standing ovation. They asked me to sing another one, but I was like, no, they only asked me to sing one song. So it was quite an interesting and monumental experience. But I did sing the B flat, even though I was really ill. And it just, I had to really like release, keep the shoulders down, make sure I breathe, make sure, the air is moving. And that B flat just soared to the back of that hall. And I said, this is what I was trying to do. And then after the performance, I kind of like
Absolutely.
fell out in the green room because I was so sick. um, but it was, yeah. And when I listened to the recording, I didn't even sound sick. So I'm really grateful for the teachings that I've learned. So students, when the teachers tell you specific things about the voice and that breath and all of that, please take into account and use
They
it,
are
because I'm
cheering.
telling you, if you're sick or whatever, singing with us, like the New York Philharmonic or whatever, you will be able to use those teachings to, to fight that push and pull. So.
Absolutely. Great advice. The importance of technique. Absolutely. The stuff that really is the core beyond the glitz and the glamour and all of what people may think that core is so important. And we're going to switch to questions soon, but how time flies. And just a couple other questions. If I may say, your representative, Mr. David Perry, is here on Zoom with us, and we're so grateful for his work and his pulling together of everything as well also. And speaking of you, as you said, being pigeonholed, as Jesse Norman said, pigeonholes are for pigeons. But on the website, it's very clear saying that you're a soprano who is transgender, and also you have a representative that really understands your artistry and doesn't only represent musicians, I believe. So I'm wondering if you can talk about that relationship, seeking management, seeking representation. Young singers were often told, "Oh, it's too soon. It's I'm not sure too late
Yeah.
is a thing, but should you approach them? Should they come to you?" I know that we have singers that have already interacted this while they're in their studies too, and how this all came about and this
Yeah,
this
yeah.
special relationship. So yes.
Well, first, I want to say that I'm really thankful for David, because when he actually picked me to be a part of his team, and he knew that I was ready. He knew that I was ready to move forward and to move forward in my career. And I think he saw that and took me in. But when you are in school, this is an important time to really figure out your future, figuring out an opera package, your voice type, what type of selecting arias, to making that package. That is the most important part, especially when you're in schooling. And as a master's student, you have to develop that package. Getting your headshots done, getting your resume together, all of that comes together. Also, making sure all of your arias are good and ready to go for auditions. And also when it comes to management, you need to find a manager who respects the process. Because as opera singers, our process is a bit more strenuous than is a pop singer. You know, there's a lot of stuff involved. There's a lot of, technical stuff that we're still growing and learning. And also you need to have a manager that understands your voice type and understand, okay, I'm going to sing this aria, but I cannot sing this aria. I'm not ready for that. And understanding where your voice is and what's comfortable and what's not comfortable. And so that was something that when I was working with David, just letting him know, like, this is the repertoire I'm learning. This is the repertoire that Sherry has given me. I can't sing this at the moment, but I can work on it with a coach. So it's really creating those type of boundaries, and also healthy singing, because, a coloratura soprano, yes, she can sing, the Queen of the Night aria, but is she ready to actually sing on a huge stage singing Queen of the Night? Like, you have to really think about, you don't want to ruin your voice and don't have a 20-30 career. You don't want to just get pushed into something so fast that, your voice starts to deteriorate at 40. So, and just really searching and looking for people who are for you. And David, he really was, he's very protective, very, very protective. And I'm so grateful for him, but it's really having that discerning ear, that discerning eye, and just being discerning of the people who will be representing you. And even Sandra Radovanasi would say that to me, you got to be very discerning with who you have to be very discerning the team that you create for yourself. So, yeah.
Wow, really great advice. And again, so important, especially for us classical singers, where the singing is so exposed, is to give the end game, to give the long term, and that long term trajectory. And especially because our repertoire and our bodies grow and really affects the course of how our voices will take its course. So that's super important to think intelligently and have a team, as you say, that are really, for you, and also discerning, as you say. So that's fantastic. And I had the pleasure of interacting with him to set up some things, and he's also very lovely and open and super easygoing and lovely. So that just all makes it so much easier and more wonderful.
Yeah.
And one last question before I move on to questions, something fun, which I love to ask. You are always dressed the nines and fantastic. And I would love to know, your style icons, your style, and the fun part of it, because even though, as you say, it's not just about those little things, it is fun to dress up. It's fun to, be in front of orchestra in a beautiful gown. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about your sense of style. And today you have this beautiful, I don't know if this is new. I know
well,
I have
my pajamas on at the bottom, so I'm not gonna get up. I have my pajamas.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and you're honest, because because you said that on Screaming Divas, and I'm glad that
yes.
But and I actually had that. I had that quote in mind, and I was like, I have dress pants on because I was like, I'm gonna wear the full shebang for Breanna today. So I made sure I didn't wear my pajamas. It's okay, I don't judge you for it, but I was like, I'm gonna go all the way because you deserve it. You are a queen, an icon, and that's hilarious. But that's hilarious, and I love this beautiful background you have. Is it? I know I have a green screen, which obviously has you on it.
Yes,
but,
it's a little sparkly background. I just want it, sometimes these Zooms can be very, I just want to brighten the masterclass up.
I love it. I love it. It's getting warmer here, but it's still kind of like wintry. So we definitely need all we can get up here in Montreal. And it's beautiful to, and we don't have so many opportunities always to dress up. So when you have it, make full use of it, right?
Yeah. So, I love wearing big gowns because I'm 6'2", and designers love making gowns for me because I'm so tall. But I do, I love my gowns to be below my feet. Because sometimes if I want to wear flats under my gown so I can get a good breath in before I'm in an aria, that's why I like the gowns way, way below my feet. I'm actually good friends with Misha Bruegger-Gosman, and she's a Canadian opera singer. And and actually my brother dated her niece, to Farah Gosman, and she would tell
Oh.
me, you know, she would go on stage barefoot. That's why her gowns were below her feet. But I'm like,
Oh,
I am too tall to be
wow.
wearing heels. I don't need to be looking like a tree. But
Wow,
um,
those are pro tips.
yeah.
It's like
But
Katie Lang, I think, that does that too, the barefoot thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, you know, I just like to experiment. You know, I like to experiment with my hair, experiment with my clothes, and just also wearing clothes that are comfortable so I can breathe
Mhm.
properly. I
Yes.
know like in operas, you know, a lot of the females wear a lot of the corsets, but also,
Mhm.
you know, I just want to make sure that I am breathing well and getting a good breath so that the sound can move freely. Um, so that's always been kind of like a big thing for me, especially when I'm talking to someone who's making a gown, is how do I make a gown that's like comfortable but also stylish and that I'm able to deliver well.
Great.
Absolutely. Well, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. It's such a pleasure getting to know
Yes,
you
thank
and such great
you.
advice and so fun as well too. So we're going to switch over to some questions from all of you here on the Zoom with us. I'm just going to stop the recording if that's okay. That way everyone can have their privacy respected
Okay.
and then we will switch over.